Wow, Andrew, so much soul, and just a kind of a natural wisdom and foresight and empathy, and you're just putting so much into this emotionally, and I'm just really appreciate it. I really respect the effort and kind of the level of commitment, right? Yeah, it just really shows in this. Here you're saying that this is orchestrated in a modern style. Of course, you've got bass clarinets and so on, tuba, similar to the last entry from Scott Jansen's, and so on. Yeah, Here you're saying the horn should play cuivre whenever their part is marked fortissimo, and if it is forte or quieter, should generally be played cuivre. You know what? I'm not so sure if you want to stick to that, because like whenever it's cuivre, it's going to be really, really. It's gonna. In other words, it's going to be stopped, right? So it's going, or not stopped. It's going to be brassy. So it's going to have that kind of tighter, like, just real. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's okay. I don't know. But I don't know if you really need that. You know what I mean? It's because like when horns are played fortissimo but not cuivre, they have this nice big um, kind of almost a shouting kind of a sound, or like dogs baying. You know what I mean? I think if you go cuivre all the time whenever it's fortissimo, you kind of lose that kind of natural sense of horseplay, right, or horn play. Here you say the string section should be smaller size so as to not easily overwhelm the wind section, even in 40. You have got no problems there. Don't worry about it. Okay, you know the way that you've scored this is this not it's not an issue. Okay, so now let's get into this. Um, yeah, so before we get started, Andrew, just to like once again thank you for being so patient, for giving me the time that it took to get back to the health where I could approach this. In fact, today's a really, really good day of doing evaluations and taking care of business and doing a bunch of other things, and I'm feeling a lot of energy and a lot of health and so on. So yeah, so I really appreciate the time that you gave me, and how patient you were, and I think we've exchanged a few messages, a few communications since that time, and you've just been very courteous and supportive, and I really appreciate that. Okay, so now starting at the beginning, muted strings. What's really beautiful about this, divise cantabile violas. Just, oh, that hits me where I live. I really, there's so many things about this that I love. And like when I'm thinking soul, like, you got the soul, my man, like it just really, I really feel that it's, there's so much about that. This is very cleverly done, or very kindly done, towards the players. One thing that I would say is, like, turn this. Here, let me grab this keypad. My screen's probably going to jump around. Turn that into a quarter note and give it. See? I told you my screen was going to jump around. Give it a fermata sign. Okay? So it's the same thing here. This should be quarter note. Watch, it's going to jump down again when I put a fermata sign on it. Right? How ridiculous. Come on. Get it together. Get it together. Sibelius, you don't need to do that. So, like, all of these things. Like, you know what? You fell into the trap of looking at that F at the bottom of the right-hand part in the original piano score and thinking that it ended, right? When we got to this melody note. Da-da-da-da-da. So no more F. But if you listen to the recording, Spencer Myer, just like every other pianist I've ever heard, leaves their thumb sitting down on that F, and they finish the little do-do-do-do atop, and they keep holding on to their thumb as they play this last little note. So everything, I would say, just make everything last a fermata quarter note. These notes and these notes here and the horns, everything should last until the very, very end here. And then I would say put a pausa here at the end. Let's see if I can get one for you. Let's hope my screen doesn't jump around. So they say comma. Let's try this again. Sorry. So I do it as a do it as technique text, or not technique text, system text. So just, add a comma, and this will show up. Sibelius, come on. This will show up in all parts, and if you really want to, give your conductor the heads up. Unbelievable. Jeez. All right, I'm going to talk to some of the techs or some of my friends who are like experts. I mean, I'm an expert in terms of like using it, but I'm not an expert in all of its little things. So yeah, so this would appear in all parts. So before the tempo change. Okay, so that's what I would do. So anyways, all right. So we got a little distracted here. That's all right. Don't worry. We're gonna cover everything. Then of course you've got your cellos coming in here, cantabile right under the violas and so on, the divisi, and it's just really lovely the way you got just so soulful on the middle strings here, and just touches of support here from bassoons and first and second horns. Very cool. Okay, so does the intro set the mood effectively? It does, because it really gave me these expectations, just looking at the score and then hearing your mock-up. It gave me these expectations of how this piece was going to go, and they were absolutely fulfilled, right? I just, you after hearing this beautiful, soulful entry, I heard an equally soulful, kind, considerate, emotional, beautiful interpretation, right? So great job. All right. So does the melody start with elegance? Yes. Okay. Just this beautiful little low horn solo, forte ma cantabile. There's really no need. You do a lot of trying to hold the strings down, but it's just totally unnecessary. Everybody could just be marked piano, right? The flutes, if this is solo, by the way, you don't need. For goodness sakes, you don't need a capital letter S. And you don't need a period after it, okay? Just, wow. Sibelius, you're embarrassing yourself in front of thousands of people. All right, so solo should just be, just a lowercase s and no period after it. You don't have to do all of those, those things that you might see in published scores of 120, 130, 150 years ago. Right, this is a modern interpretation. Just use modern standards of everything. Okay, and you also should tell us that this is the first player, right? So it's really lovely the way that it is. You keep it low, and you keep the strings out of the way, right? I mean, you could mark forte or mezzo forte, or you could even mark piano, but so long as it's marked solo, the conductor will make sure that there's enough room in the sound picture for the flute part to stand out. Okay. Sorry, I'm just waking up my other screen on my other device. So da 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 da, yeah, and just lovely. And this, this could all be one slur. Da. Yeah, and then bass clarinet and bassoons and so on. I don't know if this needs to be a solo so much right in here. Seeing as how you are, you're kind of playing under other notes, but I mean, I guess you want the part to stand out a little bit, and I mean, it's just a little weird inside here, but it still works. You don't have to change anything, but I don't know if you need to mark it solo. Okay, so the whole question of a natural flow to the accompaniment, you do that nicely. You have the little offbeats here between violas and cellos. I think that this could also be marked portato, right, or mezzo staccato, just right. And I think that would work throughout really nicely. and then and this could be slurred, the C to the F, right? Yeah, but when you get towards the end of the phrase, do you expand without clogging up? Yes. Do you have a natural transition to octaves? I mean, you do something a little different than the general expectations, but yes, you do the expansion really nicely, and yeah, this F in the middle is not going to clog things up. It's really great. Um, I don't know if you need muted strings here. If you are muting them just to really keep everything kind of controlled underneath the flute, I mean, I can see the rationale, but nothing else is muted. I think it's better just to have a unified quality of tone here, right? And just do not worry. The conductor's job is to make sure that this flute part stands out. So just you don't have to mark it forte, and you don't have to have muted violins here. All right. Okay. So now we're moving on to the next thing. Okay, so question is, does this contrast with the theme? It doesn't. So like you might want to think, well, maybe this could have gone to oboe or clarinet or something to give us a little bit of difference, like so that everything isn't always about the flute, right? Or you could just stick with it, like, no, I want it to be flute. I hear it as flute. For goodness sakes, Sibelius. I hear this as flute, and of course answered by bassoons. What I would do here is just give this whole thing to your first bassoon player. They can play da 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 da. There's no need for the second to play this and the first to come in and rescue it, and it just completely not needed. Okay. If you were really really worried about it, you could have your second bassoonist go staccato C, then hit the B flat, staccato A, then hit the A again, and then have your first bassoonist go ba 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 ba. But I mean, I feel it's just all artificial. Any bassoonist can go da 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 and make it sound perfectly beautiful, and also really beautifully even, and really nice trading off here. And I like the fact that you have the most bare of support here in pizzicato in your lower strings. That's really great. Okay. Now, emphatic color of line. I mean, it's not really emphatic so much as it's kind of sweet, really. It's just more gentle and kind, and I'm sorry, I keep using that kind of metaphor, but it's giving, right? It's not taking. It's just really nice. So, but to the point that we have an emphasis in the middle here, you are doing the right thing. But I would say that, like, if you're starting off ba-da, you're gently starting to mix things. I think it would be better to start off with a blended tone from the beginning, like from the upbeat here. Just have your second, like, because it just feels a little unnatural the way the a clarinets come in here with the strings, so it just really creates a big jump in thickness of texture, right? And in fact, you could just cut the strings. You could cut the flute altogether and just have the flutes. The clarinets. I keep saying everything backwards. You could have the clarinets start here with the strings, and I think it would be a lot more even. Da da da. And in here you could slur by the beam group. Up, down, right? So yeah. And this is nice. The bass clarinet taking, adding a little bit of weight here. Bassoons and middle strings working together to add a little bit of harmonic density, and then you just keep this as simple can be. And haha, bravo, my friend, you are putting in the portato that I have recommended in so many other scores, right? Exactly right. It's just so easy. You might want to say non-divisi here, right? This is an easy sixth from an open G string, right? So just make sure you mark non-divisi here. And this could also be played non-divisi, right? Because you got the open G and then like this fingered D below. Yeah, and then yeah, and just so cool. I almost feel like there needs to be one of your wind players needs to be doubling this C C C, this little kind of bouncing thing right in here. Maybe the English horn player could be doubling that, or maybe you could give that to the oh, maybe this could be played. I don't know. Like I really love the way that it's scored, kind of working together. Yeah, in a sense, you almost have the same thing happening here with these three C's in a row with the bass clarinet and then the second and then back. Yeah, maybe you don't really need it. I don't know. Yeah, it just feels like it needs a teeny bit more emphasis. Yeah, this is so cool though. The horns right in here. So yeah, so I would say yeah, just like this is really well set up, and then so is like going towards this, and then just very simple strings, and then done done. The trade off to the wind texture is so great here. So like there's so much like we've just looked at the first screen, and there's so much simplicity and elegance and like what is just like kind of what I was saying before, wisdom. Like you just kind of what you want in here. There's just no need to overdo anything or to over innovate or to insert certain effects or certain experiments or whatever. You're just really doing what the music is asking you to do, right? So I mean, and that's not to say that the other kinds of approaches are wrong. It's just that there's a certain wonderfulness to what you're doing here that has its own unique beauty, right? Okay. So now we're coming back to flute. So here, like, here is a situation where, like, just like I was talking to Scott about this before, in the previous evaluation about, like many of his the statements at the beginning of sections were just played by the first violins, right? So you're making the flute do a lot of work, right? So it's doing it's doing the opening statement here. It's doing the leggermente. It's starting off with the sort of this push downwards, and then it is also stating the secondary theme. So, I mean, do you want that? Do you want to always have the flute, always being the one to make the statement? Of course, like here, you are doubling with the string, so like it isn't such a dire thing. But yeah, and it's also a duet flute, so it's not such a big deal. But if you really wanted a slight difference of color, you might want to just use oboes instead, right? Which will give it a warmer color rather than the kind of cooler character. But then you kind of lose this almost sounds like a callback to those opening violas, right? It's something very similar about that color. So I mean, you shouldn't feel like I'm telling you to change anything, but I'm just saying watch out about having the flutes always say always be there at the beginning of a statement. Okay. So, is there a complementary timbre? It's really nice the way that you do this. Middle strings and horns working together. And I really like the da, da, just like the little kind of shifts in strength. I think that works really, really well in terms of the accompaniment and the stress. And it keeps things from getting too weird. And then also, like, you're dovetailing here to the clarinets from the horns. It's just such great, but like, great ideas. But like, don't forget to mark this dynamic here. You can't just count on this one here. This is a new idea, so just make sure that like with the new section that the clarinets have more guidance. All right. So now, thinking ahead to widening the gap, right? So, I mean, you just kind of stick with your horns for a while, but then you're adding more weight here with the the lower winds and and of course you've got your middle strings kind of churning along here, and it's all kind of like doubling each other. So I think that this is a place where you could have gotten a little bit bigger progressively, rather than just jump to this. But there's like, having said that, there is something that's kind of charming about just, holding off on too much weight until you get to this point, so that it's more like Beethoven's kind of flash of temper as he drops his left hand down an octave, right? Just start chonking away at the bottom of the bass staff. So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's wrong or anything, but just like, maybe there's a way, like maybe gradually increasing the strength here, is a more symphonic approach. But if you're thinking of this as being a chamber orchestra kind of thing, maybe it is good to have that flash of temper. Yeah. But it's still very cool the way that you orchestrated it, right? So you're getting back to like the whole structure of the dovetailing, right? So you've got da 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 da. Yeah. So and then the only problem that I've got is this restida 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 restida. So like the problem is like this is one of the most problematic things in terms of counting and just like all of the firsts really, really coming in on the second 16th value. It is way tougher than you think, especially if the conductor starts off a little fast. Then the faster it goes, then the harder this is going to be, like, because you want absolute precision here, right? So I mean, if there was, I think you might like have a better chance if you had one of your players going da 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 da, or one of your staves going da da da, and then the other one going like taking from the middle of the bar da 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 da, right? Because those are both really easy rhythmic patterns to play. So yeah, it's just a little weird, but I do like the fact that you slurred to an 8th rather than a 16th, because just to kind of hold off on all the 16ths. I mean, it's playable, but it's just kind of funky. But then here you go to dun da da da, and here you're going da 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 da. So I just think that once again that's really way 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 stronger, right? Yeah. And see, like you could have put the C sharp in here, da 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 da. It's like so, and then D. It's like totally that sort of galloping thing is perfectly fine, right? And then having like the flute sort of play the, it's like kind of extracting the inherent melody in there. Just like once again thinking about how you're putting flute here and flute there and flute everywhere. It's just like maybe you're really comfortable with flute. But there's so many other instruments available to you who could like play little bits like this. Like maybe the clarinet could take over on this rather than the flute or something, right? I mean, there is something kind of charming and innocent about the flute, though, the way that you've scored it. So, like once again, I'm not saying that you have to change it, but just think about the options, right? Maybe to get this very sweet and innocent sound here and to make it feel really natural, maybe there's a change you could make in the A section, so that you're not overusing the flute. Okay. Yeah, and then just everything kind of opens up and so on here. Da 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 da. And this is all going to be doubling the strings, so that it really is not adding a lot to the. It's not really adding a lot to the quality of tone of the strings in terms of like really making the fluteness of it stand out that much. Yeah, and then here you just like really getting heavy on the clarinets. Maybe once again maybe that you have this beautiful solo flute here, and maybe it could be the oboes that start adding, because like they're so great on staccato. They could be bringing out the kind of staccato quality here. Maybe that would be a little bit more. But then again, like I don't like once again I just feel like I'm suggesting these alternate things to you, but then like I think about it in retrospect and I think, well, just like there's no need for you to do it, because like it doesn't, like these suggestions don't mean that you have done anything wrong. It's just that maybe there's a way of adding more variation. Yeah, and then like here you put the trill on middle D, and that's really really fun. Yeah, it's like it sticks to the way that Beethoven scored it rather than putting the trill way up high where it's easy to hear. But yeah, this is really nice. Yeah, and then just you just have a punch here and then continue the color on. There's really nothing wrong with that either. I think that you don't have to leave out your timpani and your double basses and so on. Contrabassoon here, because they don't get any love here, right? Where they could really help bring everything to a resolution on the dominant, the new dominant, right, which we're leading forwards with. So actually, it's the old dominant. It's the new tonic. All right. So here in the C section, boom, da 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 da. All right, and just little bits and pieces of support in the color from winds. And I just think that's very, very cool the way this is all orchestrated. Like, once again, charming, and I would say that this is a part that really shows a lot of soul as well. And then strings, very, very nice and Beethoven-like symphonic, and then just the bassoons in the middle as you go da 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 with the lower strings on the bottom is a really great way of filling in here rather than having the violas do it. It's just so great. And then you're reaching up and then support from the winds again without taking over the quality of strings, but giving the strings more life, right? So cool. And then just da 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 da. Really good dovetailing. I would say this G, these should all be 16th notes, these ends here, and then you should put this G in the violas, right? So that they start right on the beat. Da 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 da. It's much easier for them to do that than for them to go rest da 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 da, and it's just a much more natural sound. And the same thing here, when you get to this this ending F, the F should be F da 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 da, right? So just like make the dovetailing a lot more natural here, and you'll be fine. And then with the same thing here, this could go all the way down to its open G, the second violin part, and then the viola could take over. Right. And then this cello part right in here is really nice. Then trading off to the and once again 16ths, not eighths, please. Yeah, and that's all really cool. And then the dovetailing bassoons as well. Yeah, I think that works really, really well. And there's these guys right in here. And you could do something like this. Possible. Right? Mezzo staccato on those. Just so it's not so it's not just like really kind of blank featureless notes, but I mean featureless is still a form of articulation, right? Right, and then this is a really strong way of getting back to where we started, right? And then this works really well too, leading forwards to the D section. Okay, well, as people have noticed in my last few evaluations for this new dotted brev reality that we are all in now, I am looking at the A, B, and C sections and then jumping to the E section because of the similarity of approach in terms of there's a restatement of the theme, and then there's then the same developments are gone through but always returning to F, right? So we're going to look at that now, and then we're going to jump back and check out the D section at the end. Okay, so let's jump forwards to E. Here it is. So da 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 bum 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 bum, and I really love like this, like the horn is taking much more of a role right in here. Now, do you remember? Does everybody remember half an hour ago when I started talking about this? Who was the melody voice? It was the flute. So this is so strong because it's like you're not going to be repeating back to the flute playing the melody over and over again, right? So let's say that the flute did take over just like it did before. That would mean that it would be 4 times in a row, right? So it would be at the beginning the first time, and then it would be on the repeat again, and then when you got to this E section, this recapitulation, then you'd have the F again, and then when you repeat it again, it would be the flute again, right? Sorry, I said F, I meant flute. So yeah, so I really approve of the new kind of approach here, right? So you've got more activity here in the bassoons and the bass clarinet and so on, and just like kind of keeping this going. You get more of like a nice kind of smoother approach here with your strings. So I feel that all really works great, and especially like I was saying before, the role of the horn in here. So whatever my comments were before about the how the functions were dealt with, I feel they also work really great here. So, and it also addresses my main issue or my main criterion here, which was like building on the opening material, but also returning to some of that. So like there's some similarities here, but but you're building on what you did before. And then you go to just all strings here. Now, I'm not sure that you need to do this. Like you need to dovetail into, first, seconds, violas, cellos. But I mean, it is a nice, it's a cool, like it's like seeing the all of the little motifs cross the orchestra is a very cool thing. But yeah, like give me dovetail on the 16th, not the quarter note. I mean, here you can end on a quarter note, but not on an eighth, right? So dovetail on a 16th. Because we want that same quality, right? But and here like you're giving the A to the cellos and then having the violas go rest da 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 dum, and there's kind of nothing else that you could do if you really want to keep it in the violas. But what I would do here is I would put an A here on this. Hopefully my screen doesn't jump around. So I would do this. Oops! Wow. Okay, so I would go da da da, and there will be no like the listener will barely hear it, and then just same thing here. This could just be like a staccato 16th note, right? So so once again, the concern here was development of material reflecting further contrasts. Okay, well let's see. You got a teeny bit of support here harmonically in the bassoons, basically just underlining the starting notes, starting and ending note for the little like answering motif. Then da 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 da, like a little bit of flute. So I think that this callback is really nice, right? And this is something where you could have just had solo flute, right, as opposed to continuing on with a little game in the string section, because honestly speaking, there's like, you keep going to flute doubling violins, flute doubling violins, flute doubling violins, right? So maybe you can experiment with other colors, clarinets doubling violins for when they're playing a melody, right? Or because that has a kind of a thicker, more powerful sound, or oboe, which has a kind of has a bright, resonant, and rich sound, right? So it's just constantly falling back on the flutes. But I mean, maybe you've got a flutist in the orchestra that you want this to play, and you're being really nice to them. Was it like sort of Dvorak? You have to be careful about that because there are all these rumors now, like Dvorak was in love with his second flute player because he kept giving them parts that were just as important as the first flute player, or even more. So yeah, so watch out. All right, so da 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 ba 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 bum. All right, so now increased dynamic impact. Oh yeah. Da 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 bum bum bum. I really love these just like sword slashing tenutos here at fortissimo. Right? Just everybody just going zoom 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 with their bows. Meanwhile, everybody else is playing this lovely like all of these slurs here. I don't know if you need to slur like all of these parts that drop down. I don't think they need to be slurred. So I think that like your like especially with the timpani going boom boom boom, and with your with your double basses and cellos going zoom, zoom, zoom. So I think the same thing here. Just like I would just have these be tenutos as well. So tenutos on everything that doubles the lower strings. All right. But everything else can be slurred the way that you got it. And don't do this, right? Right. All right. And then same thing here. So this could be two voices. Right? And then this could just be, instead of a tied note, it could be, right? So just, those are things that you can fix when you come back to this, as I'm hoping you will. Come back to this and, ooh, what is that? There's a third voice in here? Okay. Anyways, I won't mess around with it, but this should also be first voice. This should be a half note, and then second voice on this lower stuff. Wow, what is going on there? I feel like you added something, like you added a part in here for emphasis, and then you hit it, which makes me wonder what's going on here. Okay, you just did that. You just did that there. Okay, all right. Maybe it was something that you fixed. So in which case, I'm just going to do this. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the second voice. Then I'm going to turn your second, like the first voice, lower part of the interval into second voice. Right, and then slur on this. Turn that into a half note. And then slur there. Right. Oops, Thomas. So that's what it should look like, I think. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So let's get back to the criteria. All right. So da da, and then like here you jump up again, and then you have even more pressure downwards from a higher place. That's so fun. Yeah, very cool. And then divisi here, so that you've got equal weight on the upper line and the lower line. That's all good. Yeah, and then clarinets, flutes, and then just kind of screaming high notes here on flutes and piccolo. Yeah, this was solo before, wasn't it? Or yeah, so it was first flute. So now, so I think that this should be marked a duet, right? Okay. And then all the rest of this works. Really nice, really nice chords in here. Good interpretation of the harmonization that Beethoven's got here. Okay, and then this is all so cool. Divisi strings in here, and then answering with winds and brass, and then once again just go back and forth between this. Okay, and then tutti, winds, horns, and strings, and then just soft separated strings. And then once again, and then tutti with everybody. All right, I like the way you held back on your heavy brass. That's not a bad idea. And then just answering in opposite directions, contrary motion, clarinets and bassoons. Yeah, it's just so much. Like that's what I'm just saying when I'm saying like simple and wise and effective. And then going to pizzicato. See, it's just so nice. Just the contrasts. They don't have to be obvious and constantly changing, but just enough to where like there's variety, and the listeners always wondering what you're going to do next, right? And then having their expectations fulfilled really elegantly. All right, and then here you have. So I'm guessing that like you had really intended this to all be first flute, but I think it should be a duet. And then here go back to first. Okay, so now that puts us back in, back to this new section, like a recapitulation of the B part, right? Da, 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 dum, and you got like a flute, a clarinet, and the strings. So this will just really support the strings. It'll have the intensity of the clarinet, and it'll have the coolness of the flute. Right. Right. Let me get this keypad out of the way. And then the trumpets are doing what the horns did before, and everything's in a higher place, so it's like it works pretty good. And you're backing off the dynamics here, so that's all good. And then we have like similar things. Dun 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 dun. Ba-dum ba-dum. I'm not so sure that this works though. Okay. Like this part in here, this could be played divisi on violas, right? So that your seconds can go back to the role that they played before, and you don't have to give it to the weak little solo flute or first flute, right? This is just not going to have very much impact compared to all the stuff that is progressing downwards here in your clarinet family, and your lower strings, right? So look, just make this divisi violas right in here. Or if you're really ambitious, this could be kind of a higher part here on your cellos, which are already going to be in tenor clef anyways, right? So you could just go move your tenor clef back, drop this down to the cellos, give this to the violas, and then have your second violins take over what they should in the beginning, right? And then of course think about rewriting this the way that I suggested, if that makes any difference. Okay, yeah, and then this becomes much more playable. Dun, 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 and then the piccolo takes over that role. It's so great. Yep, and then once again I would say bring in more winds to support what's going on in here, and then you're sweet. And then this is great, just adding power, and this progressive energy right in here is very, very well advised. Piano crescendo to forte, and then here just fits of temper by Beethoven. He had a lot to be annoyed about. Even his fans, he could not get any rest. He hated it when people, admired him too much. It just drove him crazy. He used to like there's something that got stuck in one of his movies, which is actually pretty true, is that people would listen to him practice, and they would like start collecting on the balconies around his house. And so eventually he started sending his nephew out to collect, to collect a pfennig or a florin, or, if they were rich, to collect a little bit of money from them. Just because if they're just sitting there listening to him, they should pay. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he did that very often, but I think it happened once or twice. But yeah. So this is just really fun right in here. And then you've got that trill, this time even lower, right? The G trill. Just exactly the way that it is in the piano part, with some support from bass clarinet and so on. And then I just really love the way that you do this forte pianissimo, right? And you don't need to put this in here at all, right? Change A flat to F. Like the player will totally get this. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't need to mark but you know what? It doesn't hurt to mark them for yourself, but then take them out when you submit your full score. Okay, so yeah. So this would be one of the very few times that I would ever approve you putting the first part below the second part. It does happen. So, but like with the way that you got the pattern and everything like this, then I think it works fine. But it would be just as easy to swap them, because the player doesn't mind going boom, boom, boom. Okay, now we're going to the recapitulation of the C section. So it'd be interesting to compare this with the way that you did it the first time, right? So let's flip back up to the original C section, which was all strings, right? And then we had a little bit of help from the wind section and so on, and then, this other stuff. So here, we have it being the winds being supported by the strings. I think there's a really lovely, swap around. It's funny, there are so many changes of clef here. Like I'm just really looking, okay, then it goes to treble, then it goes to bass, so that's an F. Okay. Yeah, but I think it works really, really great. And it's, once again, you've got a flute solo, and then a little bit of support from clarinet. It's the exactly perfect instrument to be supporting, and then bass clarinet coming in. Yep. And then I think it's great that you alternate the colors here. Right. One of the big concerns here about, like, if you'll recall, the modulation is to the dominant at the first half of the sonata, right? So this passage here in the C section is in C, coincidentally, right? But Beethoven keeps leading us back to F major, right? So we end in F, so everything is either up a fifth or down a fourth, right? So the change of register or the change of tonal center means that there's a change of register, right? So yeah, so you handled that really beautifully, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, and then adding strings, right? So the thing that you must be careful about is that the string timbre will tend to dominate the winds, and the way that you get around this is to keep the strings down an octave from the top of the winds, right? So you could have scored this where the strings were more situated in the middle of the chorale, or of these chords, and then had plenty of weight and brightness at the top, right? Well, you don't really have to do that. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but I'm just saying that it's just one way of managing this so it doesn't just turn into winds to winds, and then this mixed color is more about the strings, right? So anyways, but then it doesn't really matter, because here you kind of go back to the strings. Yeah, and then and this, once again, this is like coming in after the downbeat is the weakest way to dovetail, right? So it would be better for you to go a 16th note there, right? And then this B would be part of this beam group, right? So B, G, F, E, F, 16th note, and then this F would be a 16th note, and then it would dovetail right on the downbeat to this, right? And then this would be a 16th note, right? Does that make sense? Right, so just, anyways, they just having everybody come in right on the beat is just so much easier to conduct, and it's so much easier to count for the musician, and you get a way more predictable is the wrong thing. Dependable is what I meant to say. Right, and then this is really cool. This big, expansive, higher chord. Really nice scoring. Yeah, and good higher bassoon scoring. And this is lovely. Okay, so my only objection here is that the change of color is so abrupt, right? like flute, strings. You know what I mean? It's not a false note, but it's just it is not very natural. If there was some way of easing between the colors, do you know what I mean? Like da 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 da. Like maybe from this you could come in pianissimo with your strings, and then like increase out to piano, and then diminuendo. So they're just like that. So the flute tone turned into the string tone. In fact, you could take the flute all the way down to the end of this beam group here, right? So just give it 8 notes, in which it diminuendos down to pianissimo naturally anyways, just because of the descending into its lower register, and then the strings starting off really soft, and then the violin starting off soft, and then just like really, that would make it less abrupt. I don't know, it just feels very abrupt. But whatever, I wouldn't start right after the 16th, right? It's just that you do it so often, right? Right, it's just all over the place, and it's just really going to be annoying for the players to. And then this is also da 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 da. It's also not the greatest, but I mean it's better than this is better than this, right? Anyway, so just rethink a lot of this. Just really try to have your dovetailing much more regular, on the beat as much as you can. There's nothing wrong with your second violins going all the way down to middle C here, and then that's where the violas pick it up, right? But this drop here is totally fine because that's the way Beethoven scored it, right? He wanted he wanted to differentiate between it. He wanted to go from the A and then just have the have the B flat below, or I should say, he wanted the A sharp to go down to the B, right? So yeah, if we're in the key of F sharp. So I think that is implied, and this is all perfectly fine. Like the swapping between the violas and the cellos, and the swapping between the first and second bassoon, it's all good. But just remember 16ths on the dovetailing notes, and then da da da. Yeah, it's so good. All right, so we're getting towards the end of this. Yeah, right, and this is real interesting the way that you kind of handle this, adding the bass clarinet. You might want to maybe rewrite this a little bit more for consistency of strength of tone. Do you know what I mean? Like, it might be better to write this. Like I said before, the changeover in color being more insidious, more gradual, right, rather than just being so sort of like pasted onto the next thing. These wind, this sort of this wind unison right here, just kind of it's going to be very powerful mezzo forte pushing forward, and then having the strings come in here, and you say crescendo. You should really tell the players like what they're going to dovetail, what the dynamic is that they're going to dovetail on, right? Yeah, and this is all really cool, just trading off some of these things. Rewrite it the way that I've suggested, and then it'll all be good, I think. And then you don't need to... Okay, so there's absolutely zero need for you to dovetail between different violas. I would say maybe dovetail between violas and seconds, but like this just is... You're overcomplicating things, I think. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And now here, I think you could go forte accents and not staccatos, right? Because there'll be a certain implied kind of springiness to here. Without the tenuto mark, they'll just go bam, 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 right? So you get your loudness, but I think with the staccato, it just sounds It just really sounds abrupt and just not very, not very final. It just, sounds a little, just a little arbitrary. Some people bristle at that word. It's not intended to be negative, but it doesn't feel cohesive. Do you know what I mean? I'm using it as the opposite of cohesive or final, having finality. This is cool here, this double stop with the open A. Yeah, and really no notes, nothing. I don't think that there's all that wrong with this. And this is a good return back to D. So speaking of D, let's jump back, all right? Or up, really, is kind of the direction. Okay, there's C, there's D. Okay. All right, so going to the F minor. Da 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 bum. This is all really great with the bassoons and so on, doubling the lower strings, and the horns just adding their little quality of color in the middle, and trombones as well, helping out, trombone and tuba helping out with the lower winds and strings. And this is so cool, right? Bum, but the clarinets adding their quality right in here. So yeah, I really like that. And then this da 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 da. I wouldn't say legato. If the player reads a lot of unslurred notes and sees legato, they're gonna bow them under a slur, right? So I think that if you want these separated, then get rid of the word legato. Let me make sure that I'm on the right page here. Okay, yeah. So if you want them separated, then no legato. If you want them to be slurred, then just put in the slurs, but don't even bother with legato. Okay, but I think that like there's a certain chilliness and distance here that's implied, right? And the way that you scored this is all great. So if you leave the legato out, then I think that it's perfect to the way that you have, the way that you have scored it out. And then this, once again, flash of temper, bum ba dum bum bum bum, with the oboe in the lower position that eventually, doubling with the second violins, and clarinet on top. See, it's so great. It's like a sword blade. It's just slashing right through the sound picture, and horns in the middle here with the tremolo strings. It's just so nice. There's so many cool things about this. And then I really like this. These the clarinets trading off the different little bits of of motif here. So I think that like this is actually good, like not dovetailing, because it really like highlights the fact that you are trading off between the players, and with the character of the music that we're dealing with here, where it just really it doesn't feel like one continuous string of 16th notes. It feels just more like like little bits, like little fragments of figuration, right? One after the other, in which case I completely approve here of just not having this dovetail. This is good, though. This dovetailing in here is good. But don't always end with the same time value that the other player picks up from, because otherwise you get this sort of kind of hanging over effect. All right. Then English horn and bassoons, such a great combination. Da 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 ba ba ba. Da, da, da. This is great. So bass clarinet working with the trombones, beautiful combination. And then here, clarinets and English horn working together, and then you just really keep it fresh over and over again, as you go to the flutes. That's so cool. So bass clarinet and horns, clarinets and English horn, bass clarinet and bassoons, then back to English horn and clarinets, then once again, bass clarinet and bassoons as you add very soft trombones, and then going to horns, along with once again clarinets and English horn. Yeah, so many cool ideas. Yeah, and so on. I'm not going to read off every single one, but adding the strings, right, like. It's starting to become a more enveloping tone. As soon as the strings start to come in, they're going to really dominate things. So, unless they were really icy in the background and slowly insinuated themselves into the sound picture until they were really dominating everything, like you just have to admit to yourself that when the violins come in on this F, it doesn't matter if it's soft or not, it's really going to absorb everything that the flute has got here, right? And then the same thing here with the violas, that's going to take over the bass clarinet tone here. But I think that's what you intend. Just fix some of these dovetailing pitches and so on. Durations. And this is all cool. And it's very good. Like there's so many very cool things. Here you could just leave out you could take it to this E and then just leave out the rest of it, okay, until you get to this one right in here. And then this rush downwards, and then just suddenly adding the trombones. Very cool idea, and I really like the bonk, bonk from certain instruments, right? And then adding the more intense horns and just support it a little bit, right? I almost think that you could have emphasized the brevity of these notes with timpani strokes, and then chords, da 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 da. Really nicely done. Yeah, and just very easy to play intervals here as double stops, and then just ba ba da bum bum. Really cool. This little walk up in thirds. Don't think that I missed it. Yeah, so really nice work, Andrew. Just once again, great to get an entry from you. How I wish that I could say, with any kind of certainty, wow, it's going to be great to see your entry next year, because I don't even know if there's going to be anything going on next year that is like this. I don't know what my health is going to be like, if I'm going to have a relapse in 5 weeks as soon as this is all over, or I just have no idea what is going to happen. So, I mean, if there is another challenge coming up soon, wow, it would be great to see you enter it again. And it's your support, not just on Patreon, but just in the community, has been amazing. And like, your presence here is just really valued, and that goes for everybody else who is coming back again and again for these entries, and who's also supported on Patreon. And it just means a lot to get an entry like this with just so much put into it, so many personal touches. I just really appreciate that. And it was just really lovely to look at and to be able to comment on. How wonderful it feels to be able to coach this and to have comments on it, and to help build people's perceptions of orchestration, whether they are just beginning or very experienced and are continuously moving towards perfection with their works, which is kind of what I'm seeing here in this score. So great work, my friend. And thank you to everybody watching this. And now it is time for everybody except for Andrew to comment below. And Andrew, if you have some time, go check out some of the other Dotted Brev entries and add your wisdom to those. I'm sure they'd be very much appreciated and welcome. See everybody very, very soon for the next one, coming tomorrow.